It's National Preparedness Month. I've got some tips for both brand new preppers and seasoned pros. September is National Preparedness Month in the United States. So what does that mean to you? National Preparedness Month was created to raise awareness of the importance of preparing for emergencies and disasters. So if you're already a seasoned prepper, you probably don't think twice about it. But I do have a few tips that I like to keep in mind when National Preparedness Month comes around every year. And if you're a brand new prepper, this is the perfect time to get started. If you're out there and you've realized that it's something you really need to do and you really want to do, I've got a few tips for what I would recommend as the very, very first steps to get started prepping. So if you're already prepping, what can you do in September? I like to use this month as sort of a little mental jolt to remind me to do a couple of things. The most important thing that I like to remember to do in September is some rotation. Now, you probably know that I don't believe in the traditional concept of a separate prepper's pantry. We really live by the mantra, store what you use and use what you store. And if you live by this, you really won't have to do much rotation of your stock. However, you probably do have some things that need rotated. For example, do you have a bug out bag, a go bag, or an evacuation kit that has some food stored in it? 72 hours of food stored in a bug out bag is a good idea, but that's not something that's getting rotated regularly. Or if you have a get-home bag stored in your car or any kind of emergency kit that contains food, a 72-hour emergency food kit that you keep in your home. Some of the other things that would need to be rotated regularly are things like medications, things like wipes that could dry out. If you have any bleach, I store a small amount of bleach in my emergency toilet kit, and that needs to be rotated out every 6 months because bleach has a very short shelf life. So any of those areas that you have things stored that are not getting regularly rotated but need to be, I like to take 2 times a year, every 6 months is a good time to do this. So I always remember September because it's National Preparedness Month. And then the other time that I think about this is March, and I think spring and spring cleaning. So those are my 2 little mental cues that remind me to go through my preps and rotate out anything that needs to be rotated. Now, the next thing that you can think about in September, if you're a seasoned prepper, is shelf-tember. How many of you have heard of shelf-tember? If you haven't, shelf-tember is sort of a pantry challenge where people challenge themselves to eat only out of their pantry, fridge, and freezer for the whole month of September. Now, some people will set a budget of, say, $25 per week to buy fresh things like milk and fresh fruits and vegetables, eggs, things like that. But if you are a prepper, I would actually recommend trying to go without that budget and trying to live entirely off of your preps and your pantry for the month of September, because this is a really great way to see holes and gaps in your preps. And it's a really great way to rotate through things that might not be getting rotated through as quickly as they should be. We didn't really participate in shelf-tember per se this year, but what I did do was I did rotate through some of my my shelf-stable milk. We keep some of this, these Tetra packs of milk we keep on hand. We also keep powdered milk like our Thrive Life instant milk, and we keep Nido and some other milks. We woke up one morning a couple of weeks ago and we had not had a chance to go to the store, and we were completely out of milk. We were out of half and half for our coffee. We were out of everything. And I cannot live without my coffee. And I have a couple of kids who seem like they subsist on cereal alone. So I decided to go into the pantry and grab out some of the shelf-stable milk. And I noticed as I was doing so that some of the oldest stuff near the front of the stock was getting near its expiration date. So what I decided to do was to go through some of our shelf-stable milk in the Tetra packs. I decided not to go to the store that week and not to buy any milk, any fresh milk. Now, one of the most surefire ways I've found to save money is to stay out of the store. You know how when you go into the grocery store to buy milk, you got to go clear to the back of the store to find the milk. My friends, that is by design. They want you to go through the whole store and see everything else that you have to pick up before you find the milk. And I don't know about you, but I have to make a sweep by the canning section every time I go in the store. I have to make a sweep through the clearance aisle and see if there's anything that I need to pick up. So staying out of the store saves me time and saves me money. So we went probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks without going into the store, and we used our shelf-stable milk, and that helped us to get through some of it before it would expire. And now I'm replacing it with fresh Tetra packs that I'm adding to the back of our stockpile. I don't worry too much about going through our powdered milk supply because I tend to use that in my meals in a jar. I use it in my baking mixes, and it has a much longer shelf life to begin with than the Tetra packs. So that gets used, and I don't really need to worry about it. So that's a couple of things that even seasoned preppers can do in the month of September. Use September as a cue to go through and rotate out anything that needs to be rotated in your kits. And you can use it as a time to go through and really test your preps. See if you can make meals and survive on what you've prepped. It's a really great thing to do. Now, if you are a beginning prepper, if you are just getting started, it can be very overwhelming and you might not know where to begin. What I always recommend to people that are just getting started is to start with the first 72 hours. Build yourself a 72-hour kit of food and water, because food and water are the two most basic, most important things. Yes, there are other things that you can put in your 72-hour kit, and we can get to that afterwards, but we'll start with just food and water. Now for water, most people do know that you need to store 2 gallons per person per day of water for both drinking and cooking, hygiene, everything. So what you need to do is 72 hours, that's 3 days. So you multiply 2 by 3, you've got 6. So for each person in your household that you're responsible for, you would need 6 gallons of water minimum. So we'll start with the water storage, which is the most important because you can only live 3 days without water. You also need water for a lot of other things like food preparation. And then we'll move on to the food. And for food, we're going to focus on a couple of key elements. The things we're going to focus on when we choose the food for our 72-hour kit are, number 1, it should be shelf stable for at least 6 months, and that's when we'll rotate it out. Number 2, it should be able to be prepared without adding water, because we don't want to dip into our precious water supply just for that first 72 hours if we don't have to. And the third thing is, you should choose foods if you can that can be eaten without being heated or without being cooked. Granted, some of them might taste better and be a little more appealing if they were heated and cooked, but we're going to go under the assumption that if you're just getting started prepping, you may not have any options for heating or cooking your food, and we will add that later. So to begin with, no water required for preparation, no heat required for preparation, at least a 6-month shelf life. Now let's talk about water for a minute. There's a lot of different ways that you can store water, and that's really beyond the scope of this video. I'll do a whole nother video about storing water, but basically, you could store it in a number of different ways, and sometimes it's good to have a combination of, many different ways. Like you can store the individual bottles. 8 of these is going to equal approximately a gallon, so that can help you figure. The good thing about these is that they are portable if you need to bug out, if you need to evacuate your home. They're easier to pack up and take with you. You can store gallons. If you store gallons, this type of gallon jug is going to hold up better than the milk gallon type of jug. I've seen the milk gallon type get holes in them and leak, and you don't want that. I like to store my water in these 5-gallon jugs that go on a water cooler, or they also have 3-gallon ones that are sort of more square shaped and they stack. And I like to use these because we do have a water cooler that we use them on, so my water's getting rotated just naturally. You can store water in soda bottles that you've cleaned out well. You can store them in canning jars, empty canning jars that you're storing anyway in your basement. There's a lot of different ways that you can store water. So I'm going to show you some different options that you could choose for your 72-hour food kit. The easiest way to decide what to include is to sit down and think about the people in your household that you are responsible for, and just make a menu that focuses on breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for each person in your household. And how you're going to do this will depend on a lot of things. Does your family all tend to eat the same food, or do you have a lot of different dietary needs and dietary preferences so that you might stock different foods for different people? We'll get into that a little bit more. I'm going to show you some ideas right now of some foods that you could include. Let's start with breakfast, the first meal of the day. Now you could include some cereal in your 72-hour kit. What you're going to include is going to depend on how many people in your family eat cereal, how much they eat, and does everyone like the same cereal or different cereals. You can choose a big box of cereal if everyone in your family will eat it, and if not, you might want to go with smaller pouches or individual cups like this. Same with the milk. These Tetra Packs of milk are about a quart of milk. So if your whole family is going to have cereal, you might be able to get through one of these packs in one breakfast, but if not, you're going to probably want to go with individual size packs, because remember, you probably won't have refrigeration in an emergency, so you're not going to want to have leftovers that you would need to refrigerate. You can also get almond milk in the Tetra Packs if you have someone who can't have dairy or lactose. Besides the cereal, you could do things like these Pillsbury sweet biscuits, soft-baked oatmeal squares. You could do these fruit and grain bars. That's another option. If you want to include some fruit in your breakfast, this is another thing that you want to take into account. How much can your family eat? If your family can eat a whole can or 2 cans in one sitting, then by all means include the large cans. But if you know you won't finish a whole can, then use these individual cups. And also, if you can find cans with the pop tops, that's a really great thing to go for, because obviously you don't have to worry about a can opener. But that is a very good point. You should also include a manual can opener in your kit. And you can even include some of these small military can openers. I get these from Amazon and they come in a multi-pack. This is the smallest one and there's a slightly larger one. I get a multi-pack and then I can just throw them in, whatever kit I'm putting together. Moving on to lunch, you can include things like these little individual kits. You can get these right at Dollar Tree or anywhere. They include tuna salad or chicken salad with crackers. You can also make your own if you put some crackers. You can have a tuna sandwich filling. There's corned beef spread, some pulled pork, already cooked pulled pork in a barbecue sauce. These are just some ideas that you can have with your crackers, because you can't include bread in your kit, obviously. But you can have, these are sort of like a Triscuit cracker, so they're really hearty, really filling. They're made with whole grains, so they're going to keep you full and be a little bit healthier. So besides that, you could have something like these SpaghettiOs, raviolis, Chef Boyardee type of things. And same with the other things. If you can eat a whole can or 2 cans, your family in one sitting, go ahead and pack the whole cans. Also, for some larger people, 1 can might be a meal for one, teenage boy or large man. These might be better for small children, or if you only have a couple people who are going to eat these items. Then you can also do something like the rice with chicken and vegetables. These would all be okay to be eaten without being heated. We have done this camping, open up a can of SpaghettiOs and just feed the kids when we have to. You can include something like applesauce cups or applesauce pouches to have a little bit of fruit with your lunch. For dinner time, you can include some things like canned soups and stews if you get the really hearty, chunky soups. Now, if you open these up and put them over rice, that'll make an even heartier meal and it'll stretch it even further. I was pretty excited to find these at Dollar Tree today. I think this is a new product for Dollar Tree. These are fully cooked rice. This one's brown rice, and then this one is brown rice with quinoa. So those would be great to put some soup or stew over. We've got beef stew. You can also do these complete meals. My daughter uses these a lot when she goes to work on the horse farm. These pouches here are complete meals. They're meant to be heated, but they could certainly be eaten unheated. These two happen to be vegetarian or vegan because my daughter really likes to eat vegetarian when she can. These Hormel completes, these are also really great. They've got, potato or stuffing with some meat, turkey, beef. These are pretty tasty, and you could also eat those without heating if you had to. And then you can have side dishes even to go along with your dinner. You can get pouches of rice sides that are already prepared rice. You can get little cups if everyone likes something different, or you can just get large cans of vegetables to include with your dinners. Now, certainly don't forget about snacks. This is going to be a stressful time, and you don't want anybody to be hungry. You want some things that are fun and comforting. You can have, we like to have crackers with this spray cheese. I know this stuff is pure junk, but it's fun and we like it, and it's got a long shelf life on it. My kids like to have these little Vienna sausage bites. You could pack puddings, snacks like this with the breadsticks and dip. You could pack some chips and salsa if you would like. Now that's just like all the other things. If you're not going to use that much salsa in one sitting, you probably don't want to include that. But this is a small jar from Dollar Tree. That's a great place to get small sizes to include in your kits. You can do all different sorts of granola bars, whatever your family likes. You can include some fruit, dried fruit like raisins, craisins, fruit pouches if you want. We really like these coconut chips. Sometimes I can find these at Dollar Tree, and we love these. You can include things like nuts and, nut and jerky snacks. Peanut butter is always a good snack food that you can have on the crackers if you would like. We also like to include some chips sometimes. The kids like to eat some chips. We also like to throw in some freeze-dried fruit and yogurt because these are favorite snacks of our kiddos. Who am I kidding? They're favorite snacks of our adults as well. We've got some freeze-dried grapes. We've got some freeze-dried pineapple. This is a freeze-dried mixed berry, which has some yogurt in it, and the freeze-dried yogurt. You can also include some drink mix pouches if you would like to flavor the water that you have stored. This one has some hydration and even some caffeine in it, so this can be really good if you're working hard to overcome an emergency. Okay, you've got all your food. Now don't forget to pack up some paper plates and paper bowls, some plastic flatware that you can use, because obviously you're going to have probably a lack of power and a lack of running water, and you're not going to want to be doing dishes, at least in a short-term emergency. So for the first 72 hours, you should definitely have some disposable products. You can also purchase some of these. These are larger 2 and 2.5 gallon jumbo Ziploc bags that I get from Dollar Tree, because you can use these to organize the food that you put in your 72-hour kit. And how you're going to do that is going to depend on how you chose to pack for your family and your family's needs. For example, you might, if you chose different foods for each person, you might pack one bag for, mom day 1, mom day 2, daughter day 1, daughter day 2. If your family's all eating most of the same foods, then you might choose to pack, breakfast day 1, lunch day 1, supper day 1, snacks day 1, and so on and so forth. And that way you can group and organize the foods that you're going to include in your kit. Also, don't forget about your pets and your furry friends. Make sure that you pack some of your animal's food, enough to last 72 hours, into your kit. You can either buy a small package of the food your pet usually eats, or you can take some and maybe package it into a Mylar bag or a mason jar. You can pack some cans if this is something that you feed your animal, but try to keep their diet the same, because they're going to be stressed out as well, and you don't want to change things too much. Try to pack the food that they're accustomed to eating. Don't forget to pack extra water for your pet as well. A good rule of thumb is 1 gallon per day per pet, but that's also going to depend on what type of pet and how large they are. When you're planning your kit, also don't forget to account for any changes that might come up in the next 6 months. For example, if you don't have a baby but you're expecting a baby, you might want to pack what you would need for the baby when it's born. And if you have an infant that's exclusively breastfed or bottle fed but might be starting solid foods within the next 6 months, you're going to want to pack some food for the baby as well. Of course, the items that I've shown are just a suggestion. These are things that my family likes, things that we stock in our 72-hour kit, but you can choose whatever works for your family. You can also put together this kit at whatever pace works for you. If you have the time and money to sit down and write out a list and go purchase everything at once, that's great. But if you don't, you can do it at whatever rate you are able, whether it's $5 a week or even $1 a week. Whatever you can do, you'll be that much closer. As a beginning prepper, putting together this 72-hour food and water kit is a great place to start. Think of it as building protective bubbles around yourself. So now when you get this kit completed, you've got your 72-hour bubble around yourself of food and water. Then you can start filling that bubble with other supplies that you might need. So when September rolls around, take that as your cue to rotate through your preps, to do some organizing and some inventorying. And if you're a beginning prepper, now is the perfect time to get started. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a beginner, I hope you got some useful tips out of this video. Make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our uploads. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.